Roman Reigns and CM Punk very briefly crossed paths in the lead up to Survivor Series WarGames. When CM Punk was announced as the 5th member of Team OG Bloodline for WarGames, it made sense and no sense all at the same time. On one hand, CM Punk didn't really have any bearing on the Bloodline story, so having him help Roman Reigns made no sense. But when you consider that it was Paul Heyman who pulled the strings to get CM Punk on Roman Reigns' team, it makes a lot more sense. It goes deeper than that because WWE made the most of the brief opportunity they had to set up a future storyline between Roman Reigns and CM Punk. In that regard, while CM Punk's addition to Roman Reigns' team seemed a bit out of left field, it was done subtly and brilliantly enough to plant the seeds for something much bigger down the road. So what is the master plan set in place for Roman Reigns and CM Punk? The obvious connection between the two of them is Paul Heyman, and CM Punk made sure to mention on 3 separate occasions within 3 minutes that he was only helping Roman Reigns because of his loyalty to Heyman. We'll revisit that face-to-face segment one night before WarGames in a little bit because it's quite important. Even going back a few months, Paul Heyman and CM Punk crossed paths on SmackDown right in the thick of Solo Sikoa's takeover of the Bloodline. Paul Heyman was helpless and begged CM Punk to save him from the ruthlessness of Solo Sikoa's Iron Fist. Just 7 days later, he was taken out by Solo Sikoa's Bloodline and spent months on the sidelines. CM Punk was busy with his rivalry of the year against Drew McIntyre, so it could only be visited months later. Getting to the face-to-face segment one night before Survivor Series, the tension was in the air. Roman Reigns wasn't going to tolerate the fact that CM Punk made him wait, but just as he got up from his chair, CM Punk showed up. Right away, they established the fact that they didn't like each other at all, and Roman Reigns told CM Punk that he didn't want him or need him. CM Punk repeatedly mentioned that he wasn't joining Team OG Bloodline for Roman Reigns' sake, he was doing it for Paul Heyman. When things started to boil over, Paul Heyman masterfully pulled the strings and reminded Roman Reigns exactly what position he was currently sitting in. Solo had him in checkmate since the Friday after WrestleMania 40 and hadn't let go of the vice grip since then. Doing what the wise man could and should, he gave Roman Reigns the stark reality check he needed. When looking towards CM Punk, Heyman reminded him that if Solo ended Roman Reigns' bloodline, Punk would be next. He would be the target for all the new bloodline. Then addressing both Roman Reigns and CM Punk, he told them that divided they all fall and united they survive at best. There was no attempt to give them a bright picture on how they could be friends. Heyman knew exactly why they would never get along and simply signaled to them that they could deal with their personal issues once Survivor Series had passed. CM Punk said just as much to Roman Reigns, saying, quote, that if they ever wanted to revisit the personal issues they had with each other, he just needed to give him a call. Punk's motivation was revenge for what Solo and the rest of the new bloodline did to Paul Heyman, but that wasn't it. His true motivation was a favor, an unnamed favor that has only been addressed once since then. When it came to the match at WarGames, Roman Reigns and CM Punk had an unspoken ego clash within the cage. Almost as though he broke a metaphorical cage, CM Punk brushed right past Roman Reigns when he intended to enter second to last and leave Punk for the end. Thankfully, they managed to put their differences aside and come out victorious before going their separate ways again. Punk's role with the Bloodline was over and it was time to pick things up with his other longtime rival, Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns continued to wage his war against Solo Sikoa's Bloodline. As for what the favor was, CM Punk pointed to the part of the arena where the WrestleMania sign usually hangs from starting at the Royal Rumble. He only really alluded to the possibility that the favor involves something related to WrestleMania. If we were to speculate, that favor could very well be a WrestleMania main event, whether that's against Roman Reigns or not. CM Punk is hyper-focused on getting to WrestleMania this year after missing out on a guaranteed spot in the main event in 2024. Ultimately, we can only speculate based on how things play out in the coming months, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a WrestleMania where CM Punk faces Roman Reigns. Sure, that would be great, but it isn't necessary. Instead, we propose the idea of Roman Reigns fully moving on from his story with Solo Sikoa and the new bloodline. It's crazy to think that the bloodline story as a whole is entering its 5th year, and it looks like it can still continue in some way, shape, or form, but just without Roman Reigns. So how do you set up a blockbuster CM Punk Roman Reigns clash? We would propose the idea of them facing off in the main event of SummerSlam 2025. In case you forgot, SummerSlam will be 2 nights starting this year, so it's pretty easy to have a main event featuring Roman Reigns and CM Punk. The star power in that match alone is big enough to headline the show, and there isn't even a title required for it. In fact, we would go as far as to avoid having a championship involved at all. The reason being that it can be so much more interesting by playing into the psychology of both characters. This is where Paul Heyman comes in. Just like the Roman Reigns-Brock Lesnar storyline between 2021 and 2022, it largely centered around Paul Heyman. That's the only real connection they have, but it could be done in a way that's masterfully crafted to make it as explosive a clash as possible. It's going to have to tie into another storyline, ideally one where CM Punk is almost forced to help Roman Reigns. Rather than Paul Heyman pulling his strings to convince CM Punk to team up with Roman Reigns again, it has to be done in a way where Punk and Roman Reigns are downright forced to be on the same side. It's going to have a lot more involvement from Paul Heyman, who could appear to have the interests of both his tribal chief and ex-client. It would require an adversary to Roman Reigns that isn't the bloodline, and that same adversary would target CM Punk due to what appears to be an odd series of circumstances. What might seem like an accident, like CM Punk crossing paths with the adversary, turns out to be a specifically crafted chess move intended to get Punk fired up. And when CM Punk and Roman Reigns team up together, the tensions are just a bit too much, leading to them losing an important match on a premium live event like Money in the Bank. We say Money in the Bank because it directly leads into SummerSlam. Paul Heyman on the surface will appear to be a heartbroken man who feels like he's being forced to choose between his tribal chief and a man he considers a great friend, CM Punk. He'll be great at playing the guy who is put in between, only for it to be revealed that it was his intention to have them clash horns all along. What previously seemed like a series of coincidences will be revealed as moves that Paul Heyman put in place, all with the intention of having 2 of his close friends destroy each other. The end game of that would be a tougher one to decide because you don't really want Paul Heyman to be the biggest beneficiary of a Roman Reigns CM Punk feud. But it could be done in a way where he eventually switches alliances to a new superstar, whether that's somebody like Braun Breaker or Jacob Fatu. Right off the bat, you'd have 2 blockbuster programs between the new client and Roman Reigns and the new client versus CM Punk. There has to be a superstar who benefits from it and not Paul Heyman alone. This would be a great way to tell the story between Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Although it may seem like it's a very Heyman-dominated story, it doesn't have to be. The presence of Roman Reigns and CM Punk in the same ring alone is enough to invoke huge reactions and a lot of excitement. It can be used to create a massive main event on a stage like SummerSlam, while also pushing a younger and newer superstar into the spotlight in an even bigger way. Neither CM Punk nor Roman Reigns should be second fiddle in their own storyline, but with Reigns having a part-time schedule and Punk likely having limited years left in the ring, it would be best to use that opportunity to create a main event superstar. So what do you think WWE should do to create a blueprint for CM Punk versus Roman Reigns? Let us know what you think in the comments below.